broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast, and good morning if you're on the West Coast, or good evening if you're around the world. We are so thrilled that you joined us today for this webinar, Collaboration Begins with You, with authors Ken Blanchard, Jane Ripley, and Eunice Parisi-Carew. My name is Becky Robinson. I'm thrilled to be your host today and thrilled to be with these leadership giants as we all learn together. As we get started, there are a few things I want to make you aware of. One is that we do have this hashtag for today's event, Collaboration Begins with You, at the bottom of each slide, along with the Twitter handles of our three author guests today. And we invite you to participate in the conversation on Twitter during the event live if you'd like to. We also are going to open up for your questions later in the event, and we encourage you to use those in the question panel. We will be sending out some slides with our follow-up materials and a recording to today's event. So in the event that you're not able to stay for the entire event or that you'd like to share this with someone else, we'll be providing you with that link very, very soon. So as we get started, I want you to get familiar with your question panel, and I'd love for you to tell me where you're calling in from today. And I'm going to ask our guests, even though I already know where they are. Ken, where are you calling in from today?
I'm in Gunlap, Utah. How's that?
Sounds beautiful. And Jane and Eunice, I think you're together in Webinar Central. And where are you located today?
We're in Escondido, California.
Wonderful. And I'm in my office in Lambertville, Michigan, and so we're all thrilled that technology brings us together and that we have this chance to learn. And I'd love to see where you're calling in from. And I'm going to share some of those in just a second. Looks like we have Georgia, Long Island, Tallahassee, Florida, Maryland Heights, Missouri, North Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Florida, more Texas. Is this a Texas day? Oregon, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Canada, Connecticut. I wonder if we have any, here's Canada. There's our first international caller. Man, it's a Texas day. It's a Maryland day. And our friend Kristen France from Barrett Kohler is calling in from Oakland, California. Welcome, Kristen. We are all so thrilled to learn with you. I'm going to take a quick moment. Yeah, I love to give Kristen a shout out anytime I can. I'm going to take a quick moment. I don't know that Ken Blanchard needs an introduction. He's one of the most influential leadership experts in the world, and he's co-authored more than 60 books, including this year a brand new version of The 1 Minute Manager, the new 1 Minute Manager. And his groundbreaking works have been translated into 42 languages with combined sales of more than 21 million copies. Ken is obviously one of the authors of a brand new book that's launching this week called Collaboration Begins with You, and we're thrilled to partner today on this webinar to be able to celebrate the launch of that book. I want to share a moment about Ken's co-authors, Jane Ripley. Jane is the co-founder of WiredLeaders.com. It's a leadership development company focusing on collaboration. And she's originally from the UK and is now in the United States working. And her research led to the writing of this book with her co-authors. And Eunice Parisi-Carew. Dr. Carew is a speaker, highly regarded management consultant, and she also was a co-founder of the Ken Blanchard companies. So we are so thrilled to be with the three of you today and really looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you.
And I think, Ken, you're going to get us started.
Yes, it's great to be with you all. And to me, this concept of collaboration is so important because it's interesting, you know, as I work with organizations around the world, they really work hard on their external customer service. How do we serve our customers in a way that they'll want to, you know, do business with us and all? But a lot of times we forget that you have internal customers, and sometimes that behavior in between departments and all isn't really what it should be. And we really feel for an organization to really be great, we have to, you know, break the silos and get into collaboration. And we think collaboration begins with you is really important because it's an inside-out job, really. And the inside-out job really starts with the heart and then moves to the head and then to the hands. And with the heart, we're talking about who you are as a collaborator. Your character and your intentions. You know, which comes from the inside. Are you a person who really believes in getting other people's opinions and collaborating with them? When we get to the head, now we're really talking about what you know, your beliefs and attitudes about collaboration. We hope in this webinar you will really help you learn some significant things about collaboration. And then finally, the hands, and this is probably the most important thing, is what do you do? And we hope that after this seminar, you all are going to be motivated not only to buy the book, but your actions and behaviors will become much more collaborative and all. And so that's really what our hope is. It's an inside-out job. And what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jane Ripley. Jane really did her doctoral dissertation studying collaboration, and she was really the motivation that brought Eunice and I together with her to write this book. Jane, why don't you share with folks what your research has shown?
Thanks, Ken. So I was looking at collaboration because it's always interested me, because it's a complex set of systems and structures and people. And I wanted to really understand how you could turn it on in an organization. And I happened to be working with a client who said to me, you know, we really want to know how it works. We've actually struggled to make it work. We've been using Morten Hansen's book on collaboration, which has given us a fantastic start. But we're really struggling with practical ways of making it happen. So I thought, well, this might be a really good place to do my dissertation. And what I wanted to do was, having read all the literature out there, it seemed to me that everybody was thinking, the organization has to do this. The organization has to decide when it happens, what they do and how they do it. And actually, nobody had done any work on what is it the leader is struggling with when they try and make it happen. So I thought, well, that's a great place to start. Let's have a look at what is it the leader is truly experiencing in making a collaborative environment really happen. And so I actually worked with them to find out what it was that they were experiencing. Now, there are 4 buckets that come out of the literature that I was reviewing. And these are missions, goals, and results. Then it's values, culture and values, leadership and empowerment, systems and structures and policies. And when I actually looked at all of those, I thought, well, it was really important to ask the leaders how they were working with that. And in the first area, around mission, goals, and results, it became clear that every individual in the organization, every leader, self-leader to the top of the leader, knew exactly what their goals were, how they fed into the main organizational goals. But when it came down to the crunch, the results were absolutely key. And when there was pressure on, they forgot to collaborate. And it was the goals didn't allow them to experiment and collaborate. They were so tight. So when you're looking at your goals and results, have a look at, is there some room in there where you can collaborate? The next one was values. As I was talking with these leaders, some of them said, it's very clear which functions follow our values and believe in them, and which ones don't. And I saw that same pattern go through in terms of whether they collaborated or not. So when the CEO was saying we're all going to collaborate a lot more, it was happening in patches and it wasn't happening in others. And if you have a set of values and you don't really live them, then you're not going to show up at work wanting to collaborate. Then in bucket 3, which was the leadership and empowerment, what we saw here was that modeling has to be at the top as well as every individual. There was kind of a perception that this was yet another cultural change in the business, and this too shall pass because my leader talks about it but doesn't really do it. Or I can't collaborate because other team members want to focus on their goals, or so-and-so department doesn't collaborate. So there was a feeling that the responsibility to collaborate was everyone else's responsibility but theirs. And moving on to the last bucket, which is systems, policies and procedures, that's a dry old bucket. But I'd say that people have perceptions about what system structures and policies are really about. And there was kind of a rumor going around that the collaborative software that they'd purchased wasn't doing the job. And anyway, there weren't enough licenses to go around, so you couldn't access the information that you needed. And I would ask everyone to have a look at, do your systems, structures, and policies really support your missions, goals, and results, your leadership empowerment, and your culture and values? Because unless they do, you're not going to really allow or facilitate collaboration to occur. But what really came clear for me while I was doing this work was that unless individuals address and take responsibility for collaboration themselves, there won't be a sufficient belief or groundswell to really make it happen. Because everyone else is waiting for something else or somebody else to make it happen instead of starting it with them. And I'm going to hand over to Eunice now, who's going to take you through some ways that you can make that practically happen.
You know, when Jane first proposed that we take a close look at collaboration with organizations, I sort of shrugged it off because my work is with teams. And when teams are working effectively, they're collaborating. So what is there to study? So I thought I really knew what collaboration was. But she hung in there and persisted and said, Eunice, it's not, forget teams. It's more than that. So, and as I got into it, I really realized just how powerful and how encompassing a collaborative culture could be and how few of them there really are. And teams are really just a vehicle to get the work done. But true collaboration comes from the culture, and it's way beyond the teams. It's in the mindset held by every individual, and it's embedded deeply in the culture, and it's fueled by the expertise and passion that comes from all of its members. So I started to look at my clients differently. I looked at them with a different set of glasses and began to see a bigger picture and how things flowed together and where were pockets of collaboration and what collaboration really was. And I started reading voraciously just everything I could about collaboration. And I found out, you know, we all talked about it. We came down to there are actually 5 ingredients that are critical to having a collaborative mindset and to being a collaborative person, which then builds a collaborative culture. And I want to share these with you, and they actually fit into what Ken was talking about as the heart. And notice we start with the heart, the head, and the hands. So Ken said that the heart is who you are. It's your character. It's your intent. It's inside. A collaborative heart is really basically about getting your ego out of the way and bringing out the best in others. And this is done by the first ingredient, which we found, which is really utilizing differences and encouraging contribution. And for people to feel free and able to do that without fear, that means that you have to nurture safety and trust. And I'm talking about individuals, you know, not just the top of the organization. I'm talking about everybody has a sphere of influence. The next thing fit into the head, the third ingredient. And this is the head's your attitudes and beliefs. And it means that you really believe that people want to perform. And every successful project that I know begins with having clear purpose, values, and goals. So the third ingredient is how do you involve others in crafting a clear purpose, values, and goals? And then the last, the hands, is what you do daily. And the last 2 ingredients of these 5 that are critical is that you need to talk openly. And that means you share information. You share who you are. You're vulnerable. And lastly, it's about empowering yourself and others. This is sharing the power. This is growing through knowledge sharing, networking, and encouraging everybody to be a self-leader. And we stepped back and we said, well, how can we get people to remember that these 5 things that are so critical in a collaborative person? So we came up with, we'll put it into an acronym because people remember acronyms, and that's UNITE. And so this is the UNITE model, we call it. But UNITE is such a perfect word for the collaborative being, because it is about uniting. It's about joining forces towards a common good. So what we want to do is talk about just a little bit more about each of these 5 critical ingredients that make up collaboration. And I'll talk about the first 2, which is the U and the N. And utilizing differences, it really means that you don't just talk to folks around you. You literally go out and seek input from a variety of sources. And it's recognizing, like, you're not the only one with brains. In fact, in today's environment, with the complexity and the innovation that we have to keep coming up with, you can't do it yourself. So you need to go out and you need to bring other people's experience and their expertise to the party. And you know something? People really want to contribute. They come to work wanting to make a difference. So it's about engaging people in decision making and making sure that all voices are heard and weighed regardless of rank or role. And it means reaching out to other departments and being a silo buster. The answers to problems and new ideas, they can actually come from the strangest places. Those stickies we always use? That actually came from a secretary at 3M. She invented that. Something we use every day. I mean, who would have thought it didn't come from product development? It came from somewhere outside. So it's about valuing the difference of opinions. And you know something? When you have differences, then that can run into conflict or debate. Differences are good. It's what's needed for innovation and problem solving. So encourage debate. You don't pull away from it, because creativity comes from differences, not sameness. And I love Henry Ford once said, if 2 people always agree, then one of them's unnecessary. So if conflict occurs, then you deal with it directly, and you don't shy away from it, but you focus the debate on the issues. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, what is an example that I can give you? And I want to share something that is actually puts it together, and it came from our company, the Ken Blanchard companies. Right after 9/11, we were all struck by that. And we were struck in so many ways, and including economically. See, we were a training and development and solutions company. And the first thing, people were pulling back, and the first thing that goes is, is spending discretionary funds on training and development. So we were actually starting to feel that quite significantly. Nobody was flying, people were pulling in, and it began showing up in very quickly dropping revenues. And this became a real concern. I remember talking to Margie, and she said, what keeps me up at night is I think of all the mortgages that are depending on our company. And we can't let people go. We won't let people go, but I don't know how to do it. And the leadership team took this on, and they recognized that they took up, we're not going to let anybody go, but we don't know how to do it. We have some answers, but we really don't know. And whatever we do impacts everybody. So they did, I think, a really remarkable thing that will stick with me forever. They pulled us all together, and there's 300-something of us, put us in a room for a day. And we talked in the morning, and then the afternoon was our time. And they put us in groups. And the groups were so varied. We had the CEO with the facilities guy, with someone from finance, with the caterer, with the product development. They were totally mixed up and very different perspectives on the world, and very different skill levels and experience. And they told us, you have the afternoon together. The goal is we are not going to let anyone go. How are we going to do it? The rules are you brainstorm and you come up with ideas. Everybody needs to be listened to. You record them all. Doesn't matter how wacky they are. There is no judgment. And then what we'll do, after this is all out, I want you to argue it out, debate it. And remember the goal, that we're all in this together. So the debates were encouraged. And a number of us walked around to be facilitators. And I'll tell you, the energy in that room went up to sky high. And people at the end were exhausted, and they turned in their suggestions to the leadership team. And it was mind-boggling. There were so many things that had been thought through, and even down to people saying what they were going to do individually that had nothing to do with the strategies that were put in. And the suggestions were everything from cost-cutting to how to increase sales, what we could do differently. So much was gathered from that day session, and we did it despite that it cost a lot of money. And what came out of it, though, was a feeling of trust and relationship and such a common focus that it was probably one of the strongest examples of collaboration that I have seen on a broad level. And so that stays with me. So being able to express honestly your opinion, even if it's different, builds relationships, and it builds trust as long as you focus on the issue. So the next thing I want to talk about is the second critical ingredient, and that is nurturing safety and trust. So if you want to invite people to be fully present and contribute, then they have to feel safe to do that. And fear to speak one's truth is the biggest inhibitor to collaboration. People have the attitude, if I never risk, then I'll never lose. But the reality is they lose, and so do we, so does the whole organization. And this fear that people have comes from so many places. It could be not wanting to contradict the manager, not wanting to be seen as stupid, not wanting to do the wrong thing. But the worst fear of all is you speak up and you're not acknowledged, you're ignored. And it has to be okay to speak up without fear of retribution or without fear of judgment. And I was working with a client for about a year. I was in there as sort of an OD consultant. And during that time, there was a young woman who I thought was really impressive. She had so much energy and such good ideas, just she was bubbling over. She even, not only did her job, but she was doing things outside, such as, running the charity club and things like that, just the fireball. And as during the time that we were together, I would see her periodically, but I was there, and I saw her sort of withdraw some. And just before I was to leave, she came to me and she said, "I'm leaving." And I was shocked. And I said, "Why? Why are you leaving?" And she said, "Because no one listens to me. And I feel invisible. And I actually feel smaller than when I came in." And that stuck with me, that, just what we do on a daily basis can actually diminish the talent. And what a sad thing that is. And so she did leave, and we lost her contribution, and people have to be able to feel that they can speak freely and not be afraid and be paid attention to. The other thing that's part of this for me is in nurturing safety and trust is that if we want innovation and creativity, then we got to allow people to experiment. And that means take risks and even fail. And we need to learn from our mistakes and see mistakes as growth opportunities, because it's all in the debrief. And that's where you do the learning. And Amy Edmondson, if you want to read a good book, she wrote a book called Teaming. Her advice to people is fail fast. Fail fast and often. The faster you fail, the quicker you learn. And that's what gets you ahead of your competition. Now, that sounds like a not intuitive thing, but it's true. The learning comes from taking the risk of trying and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we have to be able to do that, make mistakes without blame. I think we live in a blaming culture. It's got to be, we got to see that it's okay and not blame the other guy. I would have gotten it done if marketing had only done, their thing on time, or Sam is such a jerk, or that team over there, took all our resources. We need to, if there's an issue, then we need to encourage people to reach out and directly and take the risk and do problem solving. So this is around the heart. But the heart by itself isn't enough. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken now to talk about the third ingredient, which is the I.
Yeah, this third one is, we put it in the head thing, because it's really, what do you know about collaboration? And as I've worked with organizations over the years, this I, which is involve others in crafting a clear purpose, values, and goals, is so key. First of all, a lot of organizations don't even have a clear purpose, values, or goals in the first place. And those that do, very often, they're crafted by people at the top, and they're sent down the organization. This is our purpose and our values and our goals. And I think what's really important is, while you need to initiate clear purpose, values, and goals, it's really important in collaboration to involve them. And it's good for the top management to maybe take a first draft of it, but then make sure that people throughout the organization understand it. Do they have any suggestions to improve it? Where is it? And having this is so important in terms of an organization. Excuse me. One of my companies that I just love, of course, is Southwest Airlines. And a lot of people don't know they're 87% union. They're the highest union operation in the all. But because of when they were going to vote for unions years ago, they came to Herb Keller, the founder, said they wanted to vote for unions. He said, "Great, I love unions." as long as you can sit on the same side of the table as me. But if they want you on the opposite side of the table, vote them down. And collaboration means that everybody's on the same side of the table. And all the meetings I've ever been at Southwest, all the union leaders are all there, including, voting for, salary cuts, when they were having, trouble with gas price and other things. And so this is so important because leadership is about going somewheres. And if people don't know where you're going, which is your purpose, and what's going to guide your journey, which is your values, and then the goals are what are the specific things we want to accomplish this year. Without that, you're kind of a rudderless thing. I wrote a book with Alan Randolph and John Carlos on empowerment, and one of Alan's favorite sayings is that a river without banks is a large puddle, and so an organization without clear purpose, values, and goals, that's just a large puddle because you need the banks to guide your journey. And so this is why this is such an important piece in the collaboration. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Jane, now to jump in and share about the hands aspect and the two elements there. Hello?
Jane, we're
Okay,
having
so the hands element has two aspects to it, and there's the last two parts of the Unite model, talking openly and empowering yourself and others. First of all, I want to talk about talking openly. I want people to think about two things. The first thing is that everything will eventually be in the public domain. You think about the internet, hacking, journalism, the speed of Twitter, any of those things, and you will know that information is shared as rapidly as possible. And as soon as people can get it into the public domain, they will do. And if they don't have all the information, they will certainly make it up. Rumors are fantastic. The next thing I'd say is, if you tell a lie, it will always be in your future. If you tell the truth, it's always in your past. So often when we're looking at information, we tend to see information as being power. Well, you know what? The power doubles, triples, if it's in the hands of many who know what to do with it. The other important thing about information and sharing it is that it means you can get to wherever you need to go faster with more accurate information. Think about it this way. So many businesses say only certain people can have information because, it's above my pay grade. But think about this. You put your baseball player in, you send him up to the plate, and you put a big screen down so he can only see first base and the guy that's going to collect the ball behind him if he misses. He can't see the bowler. And everybody just shouts to him, "Oh, it's coming." He's not going to hit it. Or if you have a collaborative software system that doesn't really work and you just raise the screen a little bit, he's got to duck his head below so that he can make connection with the bat and the ball. So if he doesn't have all the information that he needs, he's not going to be successful. Take that same thing and put it in your business. Why would you allow people in your business to make decisions and not give them all of the information or access to all of the information? One of the things I often hear when I go out working with clients is, I know where that information is, but I can't get to it because there's not enough licenses available to me. Well, I know budget is important, but so is making the right decision. If you don't make the right decision, you're never going to have a budget. So think about, do I have the means and the method by getting all of the information to the right people at the right time? And remember, the information flow doesn't have to just go top down. It goes laterally. And if it doesn't go from the bottom to the top, then you're going to end up like VW, where the CEO has to resign because he doesn't know what's going on in his organization. So I would say, think about how you share information, because the more information that's shared, the more power at your fingertips. The last one I want to chat about is empowering yourself and others. Empowerment is supposed to be a two-way thing. It goes from the leader to the individual and back again. Well, you know, it's a difficult one for those of us who are transitioning from a command and control or an old-fashioned hierarchical organization. We don't quite get it. And I had a boss who was well known for empowering his team. And at first, transitioning from an old command and control organization into his team, I found it a little bit tricky. And my colleagues and I often sort of chatted and said, is this guy empowering us, or is he just not doing any work and leaving it all to us? But the trick was, when I realized, having left him, that actually he was the most empowering boss I'd ever had. And the reason for that was he gave me very clear goals. He removed my roadblocks, and he shared his network. And he left me to make the decisions I needed. And when I was short of information, I would go to him and say, can I have this piece of information? He didn't say, you can't work across the function. You can't go and see these people. He said, do whatever you need to do to get your goals done. The most empowering thing about him was that having done all those things, he would leave me to make decisions about who I worked with, and then he never blamed me if I made a mistake. He would just say to me, so what did you learn from that? And we would debrief each other, and he'd say, well, what would you do differently? And I knew it. I knew what I would have to do differently, because he had trained me, he had built my competence, and I knew the goals and the resources that were available to me. He never put a screen down between us. He never tied my hands behind my back. He gave me everything I needed, including the impotence to be empowered. So Ken, if I can hand it over to you for some final comments, that would be super.
Well, I hope this has been helpful to you all, because we think that collaboration is so key in organizations that it creates 1 + 1. It's a lot more than 2. And so often we are fighting each other internally rather than bringing out the best, so that everyone feels like they can speak up, that they can make a difference, they can take initiative and all, and they can help other departments and all. So I think everybody needs collaboration, and so we hope we've given you some good ideas, and that the Unite model is just kind of a checkpoint. And in the book, you get a chance to take each of the elements of the Unite model and see where you think you are on each of those, to see which ones are your strength area, which ones you need to work on, and then we give you some real suggestions on how you can improve each of those areas. And the instrument also can be easily adapted, so you can get feedback from people on your team on how collaborative they think you are, as well as figuring out how collaborative is our organization. So we want to make the whole thing very, very practical. So Becky, I think we're probably ready for some questions.
Fantastic. So we want to open up for questions now, and as we're waiting for our attendees to share some, I have one. I heard Eunice share a great story of collaboration from the Ken Blanchard companies, and I'm wondering, Ken or Jane, if you have any other great examples of collaboration that you could share with us.
Well, I think.
Sorry, Ken, you go ahead.
Go on.
I was going to say that some time ago, when I was the sales and marketing director for a learning company back in the UK, we were looking at a deficit of about £1 million, and we were being asked by our owners to rectify that situation and fatten us up for sale. And we were looking at how we might do that, and I literally sat down and thought, okay, we need to change the way that we go to market. And I pulled together a team from every single function I could find. And there were members on that team who came from fulfillment, the packing department. We have people who came from the telephone marketing side of the business, sales, marketing, obviously, and finance. And I have to say, finance and technical were well known for being a little bit, shall we say, territorial about what they would do and what they wouldn't do. But I pulled them around the table and I set a very clear goal. We have to redefine the way that we go to market, and we need, at the end of this, an instrument that will increase our revenues. And I know some of you don't really get on and you don't really know what goes on in other people's departments, but we're going to use these weekly sessions to bridge that gap, to share information that we have, and then come up with an instrument. And the first couple of meetings, they didn't go that easy, but by the end of it, we had an instrument and everybody was pulling together. All of the departments were. It was fantastic. It was the first time we ever saw people talking that weren't in their own department. And we came up with an amazing instrument which actually turned the business around in just over 14 months and put in 1.2 million of profit. And everybody still talks about, do you remember being on that team? It was fabulous. We could collaborate. We could bring in other people if we needed to. And some people came in and people came out. But the whole function stayed together the whole time. So I hope that gives you an example, Becky, of how collaboration can really, truly work and give you incremental productivity.
Thanks so much, Jane. Ken, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting. Our pastor of our church has left after 17 years. And normally they bring in an interim pastor for a year and a half, while they're going out and trying to find a permanent pastor. And we have a wonderful group of a couple of great young pastors and a good executive pastor and a guy who runs an Arabic ministry out of the church. And I thought it was stupid to bring an outsider, and so I said, why don't you let me be the interim pastor? Now, I'm not ordained, so they couldn't do that, but I'm now called the interim coach. And one of the things that's really exciting is that I gave the sermons the first week after this transition happened and said, this is your church. It isn't our church. The transition team is not going to tell you where we need to go from here. We really want to involve you and all. And so it's been really interesting with the whole staff of getting them excited about collaboration, including filling out an instrument on how collaborative they thought they were and all. And everybody thinking, wow, it's not just, I got the youth ministry and he's got this and all, and let them worry about that. I got my deal. How can we help each other to create the best? So it's a kind of a work in progress, but I've just seen people's eyes light up and saying, wow, this is going to be really interesting, because too many churches and other organizations are top-down driven. The people at the top decide everything and jam it down through the organization, rather than opening it up and sure taking a lead to begin a lot of the thinking, but really to collaborate and bring people in.
I love that example. Thanks so much, Ken. So I have several questions coming in from our attendees, and the first one comes from Sharon. She wants to know, what if your supervisory colleague is anything but collaborative and compulsively competitive? How do you best deal with that person?
Shall I take
Eunice,
that one?
you want to try that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one that we do come across these individuals who are compulsively competitive and don't quite get the whole collaboration thing. You're going to have to, as an individual, sort of work around them and keep pressing the message ahead. One of the things you could do, of course, is give them a copy of this book. But one of the things that I found is that generally, if you keep talking to people and keep saying the same thing, like, I want to do this, I need to do this, these are the benefits of doing this, what's stopping us from doing this, do you have a better idea, and keep questioning in a nice way, people will get it. And sometimes if you want to beg for forgiveness, go around them, do it anyway, and then show them how brilliant it is.
I think you also got to go take these people aside and say, we're trying to build a collaborative environment. And let me give you some observations of your behavior, some of your behavior. And we really value your contributions to the organizations, but we want you to be part of our collaborative team. And so you have to decide whether you want to continue to work here or not, but we are going to create a collaborative culture, and you are an important part of that piece. So give them some truthful. That's talking, speaking openly,
Actually, you're talking. What you're describing is a character in our book. His name is Wayne, and he is highly competitive. And the way that the hero dealt with it was exactly that. It kept pushing what was a collaborative approach, even though Wayne was a real resistor, and also dealing with him separately by giving him feedback and finding out what's driving that. What is it? What's under the competition? Is it because he's rewarded for certain things, or if you can get underneath the disruption of him, then and then give honest feedback to that, but really listen to that makes a difference.
Thanks so much. This next question comes from Alan, and he's wondering if there are special techniques for enabling collaboration when the team is geographically dispersed and multicultural.
Alan, that's always a particularly difficult thing to do. And I often think that the basis of that has to come from building trust and a level of connectedness. And one of the best practices I've seen is where the leader always starts with asking people about a particular subject. So the beginning of the meeting might be to talk about, let's take Halloween for this week. What are you doing for Halloween? And everybody gets to say a little bit about what they're doing for Halloween. Now, that might seem trivial, but actually what happens is that people get to know a little bit about each other, or they talk about, the conversation starts. And this may be their only point where they have some conversation, and it starts the connection. The other thing is having a value amongst that virtual team about building trust. And one of the elements of building trust that the Ken Blanchard companies always talk about is dependability. And you depend on each other so much more when you're virtual. And what I mean by dependability is that if I say I'm going to deliver something by a certain time, then I do. And that is absolutely essential in collaboration. If you want to have that incremental productivity that's going to come from this, you really do have to meet your deadlines, or you have to share the information as to why that's not going to happen. And nobody's going to blame you. They're going to thank you for giving their heads up. So there's just a couple there. The first one is give them an opportunity to build connectedness. And the second one is out of that will become trust, and make sure you deliver on what you're going to say you'll deliver on, or give everybody the heads up that it isn't going to happen. I hope, Alan, that helps.
Alan, we have a number of tools here because we do a lot of virtual work with teams all over the world, basically. And we actually have some tools that would help with this. But I agree with Jane. I wouldn't use the topic of Halloween, though, internationally. But, there's some way to connect personally, whether you send a picture and you say something about yourself. But what I found is that it's the same it's similar things you have to do with an INTAC or a face-to-face group, only stronger. And so I actually do a chartering session, that designs the team. And I start with that, and then people are held accountable. And then you have to make, when things come up like, your different time zones, then that's all part of what you talk about up front to get it going. So it worked internationally. It just has to be more structured.
Thanks so much. I have another question. This one's from Gabrielle. She says that collaboration takes time and effort. What do you say to those who express this concern and shy away from collaboration because it's easier to work independently, it's easier not to collaborate with others?
You're missing out.
I think what you really need is that I wouldn't necessarily start with a whole organization. I think you set the vision and all, but then find out. We always talk about who are early adopters. And what departments are really saying, "Wow, this is great," and they're really modeling collaboration and all. And so that you have some successes you can point to, so that people don't get impatient and saying, "God, this is going to take forever." It'll take forever for people who are, questioners. If you don't have any early adopters that you can use as examples.
Yeah.
I think early adopters is a good one. The other one is to find a department that's doing it really well and share the successes that they've had, and so that it breeds. And I think the other aspect is if you've got collaboration as one of your values or behaviors that sits under one of your values, and people aren't doing it, is getting it called out. Other ways of doing it is making sure you don't promote those people. So you put collaboration in as a competence so that you can spread the value and behavior of collaboration throughout your organization. And that kind of gets rid of the person who is highly competitive, or they change their behavior so they can be highly competitive and highly collaborative. They're not mutually exclusive.
Some people, though, as Gary Ridge from WD-40 says, you might have to share them with the competition.
Yeah.
That seems like a theme, Ken, bringing people to choice if they don't want to adopt the values of the organization.
Yes.
Absolutely. And collaboration is a choice. You can choose to collaborate. And people often say to me, well, that other department there doesn't collaborate. Well, you know what? The department is made up of individuals who all have an individual mindset. They need to get a collaborative mindset in order to be able to collaborate. And maybe if you are a great collaborator, you could model that for them.
I love that. Thanks. Juan would like to know if you have a recommendation of an exercise to build trust to allow folks in the room to start the process of setting purpose, values, vision. And his question is coming from feeling like maybe people in the room aren't trusting the leader yet, and so he's wondering how to begin that process.
Well, one of the things is to start from the same page, and there is a great book called Trustworks that Ken has written about, so he should really chat about this. But there's a great model in there called the ABCD model, and it sounds kind of trite. It's so quick to rattle off the tongue, and I did mention it earlier about the dependability. But trust isn't built in one training session. It's not built overnight. You need to demonstrate the behaviors over time, and I think it's, again, doing what some of Ken has said, is pick out the early adopters, share the success stories, and, make a big deal of it when somebody, is showing trust and nurturing that trust.
Yeah, and I think that the leader has to really, we had a wonderful speaker recently who said that you ought to come into things with a rookie mindset, which is saying, we want to really move to collaboration, and I'm not an expert on this, so I really need your help. And that we need to learn to trust each other and value each other's differences and all that kind of thing, rather than saying, boy, we're going to be a collaborative organization. This is the way it's going to happen and all. No, everybody will head to the woods, And but I like that whole concept of a rookie mindset that you need on that kind of thing.
That's a helpful perspective. So I have another question related to how a rising leader might be able to channel his or her energy to control emotions and anxiety that happen when it's time to let go and let others make decisions and contribute. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I've experienced that one, the need to let go of control, and I think you have to choose which tasks an individual takes on, and you do have to do that whole parental thing of just letting them fly and then having a really good debrief together afterwards. And if it hasn't worked out quite the way that you wanted, find out. It's probably a bit of everything that make it work. A bit of you. Maybe you didn't set the goals right, or you didn't give the right resources. It could be a bit of them, that their competence might be lacking, or their confidence might be lacking. Or it might have been something out of everybody's control. But don't take one as an indicator of a failure of their abilities. Give them another go and give them another go. People actually, usually in my experience, step up and really do great jobs. So have the confidence to let them go and do it.
One of the things that my wife Margie and I have done in our servant leadership programs is have a Egos Anonymous meeting, because we find that the biggest thing that keeps people from collaborating and working together is the human ego, which is either false pride, where you think more of yourself than you should, and you think you're smarter and brighter and all. Boy, that really shuts other people down. And the other is fear or self-doubt, where you think less of yourself than you should, and God, I don't know what I can contribute and all that kind of thing. And all of us have, false pride and fear and self-doubt issues that come up periodically. And it's really great to get people to stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Ken," and everybody says, "Hi, Ken," and I'm an egomaniac. And then you have to tell them a false pride or a fear or self-doubt that you've had in the last 24 hours or so. We say, if you can't think of anything in those two areas in the last day or so, then you lie about other things too. So it's a real journey you got to take with each other, I think, to get your egos out of the way and make it we rather than me.
Thanks so much for that. So I have a couple more questions, but really only time for one. So I'm going to ask one more question and then have some closing comments from all of you. Gwen would like to know how you work with a leader who's too busy to do what needs to be done but doesn't let others help.
A prayer. But that's really caused by an ego issue. Why that person doesn't want to let go is that they think the rest of the people are stupid. And so they need to be confronted just to say, you really need to involve other people. Otherwise, you're going to go down the tubes yourself. And workaholics are people who are afraid to let go and let others get involved. And we got to work at that.
So before we move to some follow-up comments, do the three of you have any last words you'd like to say about collaboration?
I just think it's a fantastic opportunity for every person to make a contribution beyond what they're making today, to build companies, to build communities. And it's a great way of learning and sharing. We need more of that today.
And the big thing, Becky, I want people to get is, and it was a learning for us as we were working on this book, is that collaboration has nothing to do necessarily with everybody else. It starts with you. And if you really go out there and say, I really want to make a difference, I want to listen to other people, I want to have people talk openly and all those kinds of things, that really models it for other people. But don't expect to say, well, it's their job, the top management job, or these people's. If we recognize we all play a role, then it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Eunice, anything?
Yeah, I guess what I would say is really recognizing that our treasure is not in our technology and it's not in our budget or inventory, but it's really in our people, and people bring so much to the table. If we could just tap into it, then everybody benefits. And it's not something that you can mandate. It's something that has to be embraced on the individual level by everyone. So that's why we have the title, It Begins With You.
Thanks so much. Eunice, if you can move us to the next slide, I want to let everyone know about another opportunity to learn on the topic of servant leadership and another opportunity to learn with Dr. Ken Blanchard. I'm hosting on November 9th a 3-hour free webinar with the leaders that you see here, Ken Blanchard, Mark Miller, Cheryl Batchelder, Ken Jennings, John Stalwart, Pat Falatico, I'm not sure how to say her name, I got to get that one down, and Matt Tenney. And we're going to be talking about the topics of servant leadership and how to lead effectively, and we would love to have you join us for that. I also want to, again, highlight on the next slide this amazing, wonderful new book, Collaboration Begins With You, by Drs. Ken Blanchard, Jane Ripley, and Eunice Parisi-Carew. It's available on Amazon. It's available in some Barnes & Noble stores, and I encourage you to visit collaborationbeginswithyou.com today to learn more about the book. If you haven't already bought it, you can buy it today. And if you have already bought it, we would love to hear and see your Amazon reviews. And we would also love to have you help share the book on social media. So we invite you to check those things out today. And we will be sending some follow-up with the links to the next event and with links to the website for the book and all the other information that you see listed here. So thanks so much for investing your time with us today. And thanks, Ken, Jane, and Eunice for being a part of this today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great. Appreciate it.